Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is officially our second episode of Jumping Frequency. The title came through, of course, after the recording of the first one. So I would just love to give a warm re-welcome to A'HaRa and myself here, Alisha Braché at Cosmic Gateway. And we're going to be diving into some really juicy topics of what we sort of perceive and see of where we're at right now or what is starting to occur in the energetic fields and how that's going to be, I guess, translated down into the human experience of where we're on the precipice of this frequency jump and what that entails. So, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to.
Yeah, round two. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. So I guess some of the topics that we'll be, I guess, starting off with, and we'll see where it kind of dives into is, this threshold, this bandwidth being on, there's this, well, I'll hand it over to you in a second. Um, but we've both sort of tapped into this aspect of this bandwidth um, that people are now being given the green light to move into if they choose to, which is a bit of a stretch and it can look all different types of ways. I think both you and I have been through our own version of that. And I'm sure some of you watching probably have as well, or being initiated into that and looking at how that represents coming into more of a cosmic awakening rather than just the spiritual awakening aspect of this shift in consciousness that we're moving through.
Well, man, this is such a juicy topic. Um, yeah, I think the way to frame this one, where we're going to go today, is drawing the distinction between the human identity and the cosmic identity.
Mm.
Now, in there, in the middle, is the soul aspect that a lot of spiritual people, talk about and is still valid. But this is next level. So if you've had a spiritual awakening or you know that term, we're talking about something very different. This is a cosmic awakening. And it is a total game changer because having a cosmic awakening means that you suddenly see past this reality that we're in and you see other selves and other realities that are happening now. These are not the past lives you've led as a human, whatever. These are aspects of yourself living as a different being, like extraterrestrial being on different planets, in different realms, in different realities that is going to actually blow your brains apart. So this is, we talked about this right before we hit record, was this could result in a collective psychosis. And I was like, yep,
That that was
it
the words
really
that were coming
could.
through because if that frequency is available and people start to, so maybe that's a really important one of the really important reasons why we've chosen to do this series is to kind of take people on a journey to perhaps prepare them to have information or a reference point and to start to be able to move into that perhaps maybe I don't know. I want to say more gentler than the abrupt,
Yeah.
if that's even possible, but just to know that this is on the cards. And I think without, if you're not taking that aspect into consideration and you're just purely going from a 3D model of mental health, yeah, it can very much look like some form of psychosis, but in
Yeah.
actual fact, it's not.
And people, spiritual devotees out there would know that sometimes a very sudden spiritual awakening or Kundalini awakening can end you up in the mental health ward if you're not able to ground the energies. This has a similar concept to it, but this is about connecting to holy shit. I've got like an alien aspect that's staring back at me, going, hello, this is the reality that you're in. And funnily enough, it's very much like the Truman Show. So if you haven't seen that movie, maybe it's a good idea to acquaint yourself with it because it very much describes what happens when one person or certain people, because not everyone's going to do this at once.
Mm.
Truman in the movie, he starts to realize he's in a contrived realm. So when we talk about this, some people call it simulation theory, some people call it controlled reality, whatever, but it's contrived. So there's bounds to what we've been experiencing that's full of lies.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts to see beyond that, and he tries to tell his wife, and then he tries to tell the people around him and his loved ones, and he starts to go, whoa, I can't trust these people. That's the really critical thing that makes the psychosis question come into play, because he questions himself and his own sanity, but they're also pinning him as he's lost his mind.
Mm.
And so I think that's also a distinction that is important to bring up, is that often it's the people who are closest to us who will cast the most suspicion or doubt or question our sanity.
Mm-hmm.
And then it creates this really big rift in the heart, because these are the people we love and trust, and they're questioning us. And yet we know instinctively that we're following something that is real here, but they're not seeing it. So how
And
the
it's a
hell to navigate that?
and it's a completely different bandwidth of reality. So I can have compassion for those on the other side of it, looking from the outside in and just going, they're not seeing it, they're not experiencing it. It's not an internal process that is occurring. Um, and it literally is, it's the collide of different realities, because I think at that point you've got to the threshold and you're embarking on being outside of it or breaking free from that. And I think it really happens from an internal space that then expands the consciousness to be able to access that. But it is experiencing a whole new, different level of reality itself, where the people around you, and most of the people around you, haven't broken free of that. So there's then that is what creates the frequency mismatch or imbalance. And I think when anyone goes through a type of an awakening or Kundalini experience, that is where everything around you starts to dissipate, because the frequency is so mismatched or imbalanced that it can't hold or sustain or sustain within the same reality, if you will. And I think that's where a lot of people get to that point on their journey where it feels quite isolated and lonely, until they then start to, I think there's a period of in between, and then they start to acclimate into that frequency, and then they start to bring in the next level or layer of those that are in a similar bandwidth frequency.
Yeah. And that really, like we talked about in the last episode, um, that breaks certain programs that are pretty strongly instilled in us around the family program, the relationship program, because suddenly you look at your loved one or you look at your family members and go, oh, they're in a different bandwidth. And you have no control over that. Zero. You just have to follow what is true for you now. And that can lead you anywhere. And you don't know where the relationship with these people is going to land or end up. And that's the scary part. And that's where I have a lot of compassion for this process in people. It's really important because it breaks your heart in many ways, and you have to let your heart break because your heart has to release certain people. It doesn't mean they'll leave your life or they won't come back, but you have to follow your own impetus with the frequency that's coming through you. And where it's going to lead you is to magical places, but it doesn't mean that the people you think are coming with you are going to be by your side at the time.
Yes.
So there's a lot of unknown around relationships and where things are going to end up. And I think that's the scary part for people. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it can take a vast amount of time. Like what I was told going way, way back through my first cosmic awakening and went through and witnessed and experienced that, and then coming into another experience of that in the earlier stages of this year, that was the part that I struggled with the most in the beginning because my friends and like the people around me were my world, were my everything. And then to have it
Yeah.
fall away and just drop away, even when you try and maintain and sustain it, you can't because you're talking different languages. Um, and even in frequency matches too, that can occur.
Yeah.
And that I think was probably is or can be the most heartbreaking thing when you've jumped so much that yeah. And what I was told was this is all just temporary.
Mm.
Eventually everyone who's meant to will come back in and around and align. But I think as we're moving through such different bandwidths of reality constantly, it is hard to navigate with relationships, connections, friendships. That's
Oh,
especially
yeah.
around this time. It's 11:11 as I look down the clock, especially at this time where I feel like there's this opening that occurs around the end of November as we've moved through this time right now, into probably, I feel like this gateway has opened until around the 25th or so of January. That's like
Mm.
I don't know what that's going to look like, but that's just the feeling or sense that I have. Um, and it can, yeah, you can have days where you feel very disconnected from those around
Mm.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And it is tricky to navigate. And at the end of the day, this is a matter of the heart, and like I've even had this experience in the last week, where I can feel people releasing from me or I'm releasing them, and I can't cry, but I can feel the tears in my heart, and I'm like, oh my God, it's just so deep. I don't know how to move this through. And I think that this is where the importance of community comes in, because sometimes we can't release tears unless we're in a group of people, sitting in that space. It's
Mm,
very difficult to navigate this territory alone. So I really encourage everyone to seek that out as much as they can, to be with other people and be with other people in a purposeful way. I don't mean like, have dinner and drinks and catch up. It's like, no, you need to sit and feel
mm,
together,
mm,
because that's how you move mountains of emotion as a group, as a collective. And this is what we need now.
mm. I think so, very much so.
Yeah.
So when we talk about cosmic awakening, is there anything that you would like to share around your own experience of what?
Oh my God. Talk about going batshit bonkers. Like really, that's how I would describe um that period, this period. I've learned to humble myself to the fact that it's not over, it's never over, there's no destination. This isn't something to get through. You don't get through this. It's not
Mm,
it's not about that at all. But I definitely had that. Realized I'd been functioning that way my whole life. Like, I'll just get through this bit, and then
mm,
I'll be okay. I'll be okay again. But actually, that's a complete illusion. So the whole point of a cosmic awakening is to break down the human identity, and I mean a full compost of the human
yeah.
identity. To the point where you're like a puddle of liquid on the floor, and you don't know where that ends up. You don't know where that's going to take you. And so there's such deep surrender. So it's a very humbling process. um I don't know where to begin, but essentially I had to have a breakdown to break through the other side of
Mm,
this simulation. And I remember the intensity of the grief and also the rage, and then feeling both at the same time, and like crying these hot tears. I live in Alice Springs, which is in the desert, in the central desert of Australia. And so I remember, it doesn't rain here much, but I remember there was a thunderstorm once, And I was in the thick of this, realizing we are in a simulated reality. And
Mm,
I went out bush and there was thunder cracking above me, and I was screaming with every cell of my body, screaming and crying at the control that we
mm,
are in.
mm.
And the lies and the illusion of that, like it was so intense, and I had no other way. Like I was jumping out of my skin,
Mm, mhm.
and I couldn't convey it to anyone around me. Like, you know, my close friends are amazing. They just, you know, listen to me and whatever, but it was unrelatable to them at the time. And so they would just sort of hold space or whatever. And thank God, you know, that I had stable people like that, even though their eyes were popping out of their heads at some times. And, you know, I remember at that time, even doing that, like I was screaming and crying in the thunderstorm. It was such a dramatic scene, right? Ended up on the ground. I'm pounding the ground, and I remember going home, going, "Oh my god, it hasn't shifted a fucking thing."
Yeah.
I felt the same going home. After that, I was like, "Whoa, how do I move this?" And that's when I
Mm,
started to write about the simulation, how I
mm,
saw that it was constructed, and how to deconstruct it, all the pieces coming together that I was being shown. And I want to highlight one thing at the time, because, and you mentioned this before we started recording, around the physical aspect. Like, this is when we know stuff is real, when the body changes, when we actually notice physical things that are
mm,
different. And for me at that time, when I was uncovering the simulation, I had a toothache, and it wasn't an infection or anything like that, but it was a deep filling. And I was told by the dentist, "Oh, you're going to need a root canal because the filling is touching on the nerve, da da da." But that's when I realized, and I'd never had a tooth out before, I'd never had a root canal. And that's when I started to tap into what are the teeth about?
mm,
And and I realized that the truth is in the tooth. And because the teeth are rooted in the past, and all the shit that is buried in the gums and underneath the nervous
mhm,
system, which is also an infiltration in the human body to keep us nervous.
mm,
You know, so the teeth themselves were a lie in a sense. That's what I was seeing, and the truth is in the tooth. And I was like, far out. I've got to surrender here to something with this tooth, because I'm not getting a root canal. That was a
yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I heal the pain? Can I heal this? And eventually I had to go all the way. And I've never gone so deep into surrender into my body, into that part of my mouth, underneath the root system of the teeth, to pull it out, to get it pulled out. Um, and that's when I got that tooth out, that's when so much more was revealed to me about the simulation and how it operates, right? And I remember being out in the desert once again and holding my tooth in my hand that had been taken out, one of my molars. And I was like saying to the sky, which to me is like the dome, if you imagine in Hunger Games, you know, the controllers are up there, which is all an illusion. They're not up there, but they're nowhere. But I was like kind of, again, like screaming at the sky with this tooth in my hand, going, "You fuckers, you're not going to control me any longer.
Mhm,
I surrender, and I see what you're doing and how deep into the root system of the body that it goes." So this simulation is literally in our bones, in our physiology. The bodies have been hybridized to the eyeballs. And I started to break down how the bodies have been infiltrated physically through the nervous system primarily. So that's just touching the surface of my cosmic awakening. So you can imagine the people around me at this time
mm,
would have been thinking, and a lot of it wasn't, you know, privy to them, but I was fucking crazy, and I was furious. I was
mm.
furious, right?
Yeah.
And this is stuff that ends you up in a ward,
Yes.
um, or medicated. And thank God I didn't go down that path. And I have an amazing family who don't necessarily understand anything I'm saying, but they just accept it. They
Yeah.
accept my craziness.
Hmm.
So I was very fortunate in that too, to
Hmm.
not be shunned by them. But I also had to erupt in order to express and for them to feel where I was coming from, because I was unearthing so much about
Yeah.
my life, about this life, existence, everything.
Yeah.
So there you go. This little snapshot. It's very dramatic, but it's true.
Mhm. I can relate so much to that as as you talk. I mean, the focus for me was so much on the physical body too and healing. And I
Mm,
was almost going through my whole body with a fine-tooth comb on a daily
yeah,
basis to iron out all the nuances that were embedded, that had become embedded in my physical form, that were no longer, it was just like this ripping out is the only way I can describe it, and going back into a lot of memories from childhood and how that sort of came through. And we may touch on that, but maybe down the track. Um, but I knew in that way, in that heightened space, I could recorrect everything in my body. And I actually went through a corridor or a
yeah,
period. It's actually, unfortunately, it's morphed back. It hasn't stuck, but I know what is possible now in terms of even
mm,
down to the bone structure of looking at potentially how my hips are misplaced and that could be corrected.
oh,
It was very physically related, and I can relate to the anger and rage because I just felt like I was
yeah,
being tracked. I was just being part of this big scientific
yeah,
experiment, which I think has its cosmic implications because I do feel, and I've spoken to many people about this, that we are being observed and watched from our cosmic aspect that is, in fact, helping, trying to support us breaking out of that and tracking the way so that we can support others in doing so. Because the magic and the bliss and the ecstaticness that is beyond as you kind of morph out of that. And,
mm,
I opened up into this whole reality is what I have been deeming New Earth to be, or this what I call the new creative space. It's
yeah,
not fully new earth because I think that's still a little ways away, but there is this
mm,
place that we can break out of the control structures and we can enter into this place that's much more liberated and fun and
mm,
playful.
mm, mm,
Um, and it has so many components to it. And I was literally experiencing that reality for a period of a couple of months, but it was an isolated experience. No one else in my reality was, they were in my consciousness, but not physically. So, I mean, there's so much more to it, but
oh my God. Yeah, there's so much more. Yeah, and I think part of it is the cosmic awakening is seeing evil, because we've been sheltered from evil, the evil that has constructed this reality and kept us under control, and breaking that down, and satanic ritual abuse and trafficking and getting more traction.
mm,
But it goes so far beyond that. The evil goes so far beyond that. And so, in order to move through into the new creative space, like you're saying, we have to stand in the middle of light and dark. So that's why I love your work, Alisha. Like, really love it, because, and who you are and what your story is, because I see you embracing both sides equally. And to me, that's actually quite rare.
mm,
At this point in time, I think there's still a lot of whitewashing around the spiritual movement, and even people who are awake to these darker aspects are still not really seeing or speaking to the simulated part.
mm,
Um, and yeah, and I think that's really essential for our ascension, if you like.
mm, mm,
Um, but I want to ask you a question. Um, what, because I think this is the thing about embracing the cosmic identity. I mean, there's all this stuff out there now around the new earth and human beings and embracing our sovereignty and we're so powerful, we're powerful beings. That's all great. That's a great affirmation. But can you break down what your powers are? Right. And
Mm.
so the thing is about having a cosmic identity breakthrough is that you start to awaken and connect with those powers and use them. So what powers specifically have you, or big question, I know, because there's a list, but like which one jumps to the front of your mind around what you've received from this breakthrough?
Yeah, I think the ability that I knew and was putting into practice every day that I could literally heal anything. There was nothing that couldn't
Mm,
be
cool.
um, brought back into its original state. Probably is a better way, not heal, but bringing,
Mm,
especially in the physical like aspect, because that sort of blew me away. Um,
yeah.
the ability to simultaneously read timelines. Um,
Ooh. Oh, hello, doggy.
yeah, we have a
FOMO.
big, oh, big sook. Um, I think the instantaneous materialization of things that were occurring that just seemed beyond this realm world. I'll give you, and just being able to tap into infinite information. I remember portions of it, and it is a bit sketchy. I'll be honest, coming, going through that, and then kind of being switched off from the full. It's almost like the tap was turned on full blast, and then it just kind of got, you know. Um, but I do. So it's like the memory of it and trying to reconcile. Like, I still feel like to an extent, I'm in a reconciliation process of that to be able to bring it in to full cohesion within myself. But I could access any information I wanted. And it was like, I remember just having lunch with my parents and they were talking about things prior to my birth that I wouldn't even know. And I could just tap in, read the timeline, get the information and go, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like it was just non-stop. So the ability to
Mm,
not only read timelines of information, but I feel like the ability to manipulate timelines or to change timelines or to consciously choose them. And I was pulling out obsolete timelines. I was clearing my field. I felt like I had fully disconnected or unplugged from the matrix system that happened internally. And then it represented itself in what I was experiencing. But I remember just having a brief conversation one morning about a pair of earrings. My dad questioned me about this specific pair of earrings and he was looking for them for my mum. And I said, oh, I know where they are. They're, in your house, da, da, da. Check this in this room, in this box, da, da, da.
yeah.
It was like I could remote view or track anything.
Hmm.
And then later that day, I walked into my bedroom and those earrings were sitting on and I was like, what the actual? And that's where it kind of got a bit because I was like, who's been in my house? And that's where the human part, but
Yeah.
these things were actually materializing in my space. I feel like if I'd gone with it, but there was definitely dark undertones because of I guess, the beginning of what led me into that. And that was trying to track the root of all the darkness yeah. So anyway, there's a lot to it, but I would say the ability to heal
Mm,
or bring the body back to its original state to in that process to clear out inorganic overlay or timelines that were corrupted that were overlaid into the experience here. um yeah, being able to instantly manifest things like and have things materialize and the ability to see. just way beyond this. Like I was privy to seeing the rebirth of this entire cosmic
Mm,
region of this,
mm,
and how we needed to sync or harmonize our body with the recreation of this birthing process that is occurring. Um, but I think when you're in those states, I think the other aspect was I not only tapped into a cosmic aspect of myself, I became privy to all the dimensional aspects of me, and I could incorporate that all in one melting point of this physical
mm,
body. So you can imagine the frequency behind that was kind of enormous. I felt like, and the morphing and the changing of the physical body. I think I mentioned to you, I woke up one morning and my body had literally dropped so much density and weight that I was like, I'm skin and bones, and it wasn't anything that I was doing. I wasn't on a. I'm like, oh, how can I, But that just literally, I felt like
mm.
I kind of
Yeah.
came back into an original body that was not in defect, if that makes sense.
Jeez.
So I think that's some of the high points, but it's a lot of work to process through all of that because there is a lot of anger and rage and confusion that comes up in and around those type of experiences.
Far out there is. Yeah, you don't access these powers without moving through human emotion and the full extent of that. So what you've shared is actually really amazing. It's so amazing. Some of these high level powers you've had access to. Um, what I mean, the thing is, the question that comes up for me is people have different capacities to be able to handle these powers and why they come through at different times. And obviously, you've got this incredible capacity to receive some of these abilities. What would you attribute that capacity to?
I think there's a couple of components. I think one is I think being able to access abilities that I have on in different aspects of me. It's like bringing and pulling that through, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're here is to remember those aspects of who we are and then to bring those abilities through because we're talking about working with consciousness technology that is available to us that everyone I believe has access to. um, but I do feel that there is probably a darker component to it in terms of what ties into more SSP um, testing my lab aspects that had been worked on as a child. And then because I felt like in that experience, I was trying to reconcile a lot of those timelines. And it was like whatever abilities were perhaps enhanced under duress, under, observation, under it was like I was like reclaiming that back for myself.
Mm.
So I don't know if that answers it, but yeah, I think that's some of it.
That's a big question, I know. Yeah. But I think it's something that people might be asking themselves, like, well, how come she gets access to those things and I get access to other things or don't get access at all? And, how does all of this really work? And
I
I do
think
think that interference, so to speak, uh, experimental interference, I think from at a young age, fractures the psyche in a way that opens up powers, but also creates other problems in this realm for us to work through. But then if we can integrate all of that, then there you go. You're an example of that.
yeah, thank you. But I think everyone has different and very specific particular skill sets. And I think they're only tapping into
Mm.
what abilities they have worked with or mastered with previously, because it should come in as something that is natural, um, that feels natural to work with. So,
Yeah, yeah, and it does relate back to the cosmic identity, who you are and what your specialty is on whatever spaceship you're flying around on, right? For example, my work with body types, I know that there's an aspect of myself, cosmic aspect of myself that is to do with the blueprinting of bodies and what different body types, what the purpose is of those body types. So I've, managed to access that in this realm. And I remember when the 12 creator types came to me, I had a complete emotional meltdown, nut job moment, which often happened before I got like this amazing bolt of brilliance. And I remember crying on the land, like another moment. This is 8 years ago now when they first came through, and I really had no idea about a lot of this in this way anyway. I remember like crying on the ground and sobbing and then it's like there was this crack in the field and I saw the symbols of the body types coming through. They came as symbols, the 12 body types. Actually, I only got 8 first and then the other 4 came in. And I knew that these body types came from another realm.
Yeah.
They weren't from this realm. And so I've been bridging that and grounding that in this realm with every person I've profiled ever since and teaching the creator types and all of that. So this is very much about grounding whatever abilities you have on the other side. And this is where running your own business or whatever your delivery mode is, that is completely yours, where you don't have constrictions of a job description. You're actually operating by your cosmic job description instead, so that's creating the bridge for others to follow and to strengthen this channel in us all outside of the simulation. So I think it's good for people to just go, you know what, everyone has different powers. We don't always know why we have those powers, and they might seem a bit, narrow or specialized or kind of confusing as to what they're for, but to just keep following it. You just never know.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. 8 years ago was when I was downloaded my healing modality, so to speak. It's changed and morphed and grown a lot since then, but it was after many years of kind of learning or remembering probably, you go on that journey of, well, at least I did, picking up that modality, trying this, trying that. And every time I kind of went to it, I was like, why am I here? I already know this. But it was building or creating a foundation potentially until I got to the point where I was like, this feels too rigid, structured, formatted. It doesn't feel unique. And it was about 8 years ago, maybe a little, that I was just working on someone and then I got shown and it just like, totally opened up.
Cool.
And that was the connection to what I was then being told. This was the Arcturian frequency that I was working with. Back then, I didn't even know what that word meant. It just kept coming through every session that I did. So now, having a much greater understanding of that. And then probably tapping into the next level of that now, I think that I am a big believer, and I love that you touched on business or the person's way of being able to present that. I definitely see a world that we're creating or encouraged to create that is totally outside of the system, where we're all operating in our own unique ways that isn't connected to. It gives us the expansion, it gives us the freedom, it gives us a sense of purpose and sense of self, a greater sense of true self, to be able to do and deliver what we've come here to do. And that's how we break down, that's a good proactive way of how to jump out of the simulation, if you will, or jumping out of the matrix, because we're not then controlled by those constraints. And, I was saying this to you, off the recording, I can go through periods where my consciousness temporarily feels like it gets shut down. I feel quite depressed or disengaged. And that is because of that bandwidth. It's like trying to compare to normal society standards of like having that, what did you call it, the nuclear family, or having these sorts of things that everyone else seems to have. And it's like the
Yes.
discord of not being having that can create this feeling of, but then when I come back into who am I, why am I here, the purpose, that's where I go, hang on, that's all kind of irrelevant. That's coming in its own way. And I think that's where we're at the precipice of. We're breaking out of all those models and creating a pathway that hasn't necessarily had its emergence yet.
Yeah, totally. And this circles back to where we started, which is like, okay, this precipice that people are on. And I really feel like, Pluto into Aquarius is so significant because it's the hallmark of the new world. And that equals chaos because what we're moving from and what we're moving to is just like next level different.
The big frequency jump.
It's a huge, that's the frequency jump. Yeah. So when people say, what does Aquarius mean? It's not about being into astrology. This is like, these are ages that humans are moving through in the simulation. We're moving into the Aquarian age, which is a different game cartridge. So I describe it as tech aliens and community. Basically, like that kind of describes in a nutshell what we're moving into. And if you can't embrace the transition around those three things, then you're going to struggle. And what you touched on then is around, okay, can we move into our cosmic identity? The cosmic identity is going to push us to drop the 3D constraints that we've created. And a lot of those are based in the old identity. So let's get really practical. Job, mortgage, where you're living, kids, partner, all of these things can be, not that they have to go away, but are they being done in the old energy or the new energy? So, for example, your kids aren't going to go away, but how are you being a parent? And are you sharing the parenting role with other parents so that you're moving more into a village mindset? So things like that are so key. Can you let your job go and your job identity go? I remember when I left my career as a project manager, I felt like I was in total free fall just from losing the title.
Yeah.
Just the title. I couldn't believe it. And then I created my own business 11 years ago. And thank God I did, but I have been in a complete metamorphosis out of that attachment to a title. So I think I can see everyone's got their 3D things to let go of, but the key is you and I, and we've talked about this, is that we're free to move and shift and pivot at any time because we're not in attachment to any of that. So even if you have those things, you're not attached to them. So you can walk away or you can change direction or you can move location, whatever is calling you, your cosmic aspect is calling you to do at the time. And you're not in resistance to that and going, oh, but I can't because of this belief or I'm afraid of this or that or whatever. So it's kind of like being a clean skin. If you want to take on your cosmic aspect, you got to be a clean skin. You can't be attached to all these 3D human things that are just ideas.
Perfectly summed up, I think. Yeah. It's a bit of a leap, it's a bit of a jump, it's a confusing phase, yet you wouldn't, I think in hindsight of being able to take that jump, you wouldn't want to go back. You wouldn't want it any other way.
No way. But don't expect the path to be comfortable and nice and calm and all these things that the mind wants to tell us, that, oh, we don't have to go into free fall. We don't really have to take massive acts of courage. We don't really have to let go of this or that. Yes, you do. You don't get there without messiness, without chaos. And then you find equilibrium again at every step of the way. But I think the mind can play tricks and go, oh, I don't need to do that because that would cause chaos. So that's not right. Well, actually, sometimes you need chaos to make a break and everyone around you goes into chaos and then it's even more confronting, So this is welcome to the era of the frequency jump.
Yes. well
Oh,
embraced. And
messy, messy, messy.
I keep getting this vision repeatedly over and over that it is an inside cleanup job that then requires external action. And
Mm,
it feels like the simulation or this matrix, I'm calling it matrix or matrices that exist within the energy field. That's how I'm seeing it. It's almost like a web or a network, like a gridding system that is obsolete, and it looks dark, it looks gray or black, blackened, and it's almost imploding or deconstructing within individuals
mm,
who are ready or being called to take that leap. And as that implodes or, dissolves within the individual, they then get greater access to that cosmic version of themselves that's outside of the threshold of that. But then that then starts to require shifts and changes in some of the fundamental aspects of life to be able to then hold and embody that and continue. It's not just like a one-off process. It's this ever evolving calling that is.
yeah. And every time you drop a 3D program, you earn a stripe. So, it's ongoing. There's unlimited stripes.
And also, I think to encourage people to be courageous and to take that,
Yeah.
I feel like all of us came in with these systems at play in our field that are connected to the greater systems.
Hmm.
And as we deconstruct that within ourselves, it's almost like we're pulling the rug out under, some of the larger, more corrupted systems
Mm, mm,
globally, and
yeah,
that's how the larger change the domino effect starts to take place.
100%. Pulling the Jenga pieces out. That's what's like each
Yeah.
person who withdraws from a matrix program,
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to talk about to the clean skins. There are people out there who have dropped a lot of the 3D
Mm,
attachment and they're lost. They're
mm.
going, what do I do now? I'm floating in space. I've got no tethers to anything. And there's one answer to that. You've got to find your people.
Mm.
And as your frequency gets stronger, you will find people in your frequency band. And then it opens up a whole next level of the game, which is around bonding, human
Mm.
bonding in a community setting. And all the
Mhm.
lovely childhood wounds that arise in those settings, with different people and different scenarios, that will show us where we're at. It's the same as that old saying, if you think you're evolved, go and live with your family for a week. It's the same thing now. It's like if you think you're a clean skin and you've had your awakening, go and live in a community and see what comes up. And that's the work now, because
Yeah.
whatever's coming around this new age of Aquarius around money,
Mm.
so whether it's universal basic income where we don't have to work, whether it's robots taking jobs, whether it's,
Mm.
who knows. The point is we have to reclaim and embrace and embody our humanity more than we ever have before. And that means
Mm.
doing things that the robots can't do. So feeling, human connection, touching other bodies, being together, in relating in different kinds of relationships,
Mm.
all those things are going to matter. Energetic work, working with frequency matches, all that kind of stuff that the bots can't do.
No,
So we're
absolutely.
going to be really pushed in that direction. And the shit hits the fan when we go deeper into human relating, let's face it, because all the family wounding comes through.
Mm. Mhm.
So that's the work now. If you're feeling lost as a clean skin, jump into a community or start to form groups of people where you are and embed yourself in that. See how you go.
Mm. And I would like to speak to that because I do have a lot of people who ride a very isolated solo journey and are yearning for that. And I think we're all yearning for that in
Yeah.
various levels. Just call it in, sit
Mm,
with it,
mm,
expand your field and cast the net and call it in and vibrationally align. Those
yeah.
people will show
Yeah.
up. It may not
Yeah.
happen automatically or straight away, but it will start to migrate into your awareness and your experience. And then next thing you see a flyer for this or, That like it
Mm.
just comes in when it's called in. So you don't have to go at it alone. I do feel like a big portion of this year, especially 2024, has been unplugging. And I feel that a lot of people feel like they're lost and in limbo and directionless. And I think that serves the purpose because I think so many of us have disconnected, at least energetically or even physically, from a lot of these matrix programs. And then I think there
Mm.
is an incubation phase before the next can reveal itself. It's almost like you've got to, go through that, sit intermittently, and then the next can, and that's starting to really take shape and open up at the moment.
Yeah, and I would distill it down to three things that need to come online once you become a clean skin and you're really landing in a new zone. Um, the heart is the part that wants to connect with others. Then you've got the lower half of the body, the sacral area that wants to find its root. It wants to find the right location. So this is also important. Sometimes you're going to have to move location to find your people. And so you've got to go into deep listening in yourself and into the land that you're on and go, okay, show me where I'm meant to be. And then everything suddenly opens up. So I find that a lot of people are lost because they're in the wrong coordinates for
Yeah.
their cosmic mission. And once they find those coordinates, oh my God, like everything just flows. And you'll know that's there when you're in the place, you know.
Yeah.
So and then the third thing is around seeing. It's the discernment, the third eye, being able to see what we haven't seen before. And that
Mm.
also has to come online. So when you have those two things, man, you are flying into the new world.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow, what a conversation. Thank you. It's all just
Yep.
flowing through. So
Yep.
I just want to, well, thank you first, A'HaRa, for being here and supportive, sharing some of these concepts and ideas and information and your own personal experience too. Your wealth of knowledge and what you bring to the world through your unique modality is so important in part of that path of people finding, ways that they can work with their sense of purpose. Um, and just, yeah, I want to thank everyone for watching, tuning in and listening. There will be more of these. We will go into depths, breaking down more of the topics that surround all of this. And
Mm.
so, yeah, thank you for being a part of this journey as we expand in this frequency jump.
Yeah, thanks for jumping with us. And to you, Alisha, for spearheading this and like your courage. I love it.
Courage, I think, is the key word. You need
It's those
courage to
green
jump.
eyes you've got. She's got green eyes. Green eyes mean courage.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, thank you. I look forward to hearing from you all in the comment section if there's specific things that you would like us to dive into, to
Mm.
talk about, clarify, give more context around. Please feel free. If you have or having your own experience, if you feel free to share, be great for any sort of comments that flow through. So thank you until the next episode. See you on the flip side of this frequency jump.
Bye.
Bye.